just looking at my to-do list of all the chores that need to be done around the house. There's so many of them. Where do we start? And how can we be sure to be able to follow those principles that we just spoke about posture, positioning, and also our pacing? And let's take a look at as well how the 4Ds can help us to be able to accomplish our tasks. We'll try to see what sort of tools we can use that can make our job easier. But please, if you have some techniques that are already working for you, then keep up with those. Please enjoy the follow. So welcome to my humble abode. So one of the chores that we have to do at least weekly is dusting the house. So what are some things that we can do to ensure that we keep proper posture and positioning? Notice some of these tricks. We're getting down on our knees to be able to dust the table, perhaps in the living room, it's not going to be easy for all of us. Perhaps it's hard on our knees, on our back. We may find it difficult to get up afterwards. So if we're not able to simply dust in this sort of a manner, then what we could do is bring over a stool. So then instead of having to bend down onto our knees, we can instead use that stool, which brings ourselves closer to the surface that we're working at. This will allow us to keep better posture and positioning, and again will allow us to pace ourselves out throughout that activity. But again, if the activity we find to be too difficult, then what we can do is delegate this task to somebody else, maybe to a family member, maybe to a friend. For some of us, we may even consider paying somebody to come into the home to do the housekeeping for us. If this is an option for us that we can take advantage of, then all the better. Now ideally, when it comes to any sort of dusting that we might do, we always want to keep everything that we're working at between our shoulder height and the height of our hips. We don't want to have to extend up really high to reach up, because we know this could be hard on our shoulders, it can be difficult for our neck, and it's hard to keep good posture. That will fatigue us easily and cause some troubles down the road. So again, we want to try to keep things between the level of our head and the level of our waist. So if we can't do so, what can we do to be able to reach higher up? Well, there are some various things that we can try. So one option that we could use is a telescopic pole. As you notice, this pole extends, and this becomes very handy when we're trying to reach those really high up spots, perhaps in the stairwell, perhaps in the corners we might see a few cobwebs. So what we can do, we can buy one that has a duster at the end, or in my case what I'm just going to do is put my cloth over top of the corner, and then I'm going to be able to reach up those spots I wouldn't otherwise be able to reach. Let's just say that having a pole like this can really go a long way. Another option that we could use is using a step stool. Here I have one here with me. So by using that step stool, I can keep again my targeted area between my shoulders and my hips, thus decreasing the pressure on my shoulders and allow me to keep better posture. So then I'm using my energy in a better way, more efficiently, and it's going to allow me to accomplish more things with the energy that I have and lighten the load and make it easier on us. Ooh, have you ever had to clean the tops of your cabinets? One trick that we could use instead to make it easier on us is lining the top of our cabinets with wax paper. And then every so often we can remove the wax paper and put fresh ones on instead. That will save us a lot of time and trouble instead of having to clean up all of this gross stuff that ends up on top of here. Yeah, that's gonna need some work. One chore that nobody seems to enjoy is having to clean the shower. You know, all that soap scum that can get caught on those tiles can be very difficult to be able to get off. So first of all, we want to take advantage of any sort of products, of course as long as we're not allergic to them, that will allow us to be able to remove that soap scum and residue a lot easier. Today I'm going to be using something that's called Vim, but of course you can use whatever you have at home that you find to be helpful and that works great. Now first of all, a helpful tip is right after we finish having a shower, try to rinse off everything that's already there. That way the next time, most of that soap scum is already gone. So if we can invest in something like this, a removable shower head, that will allow us to be able to spray everything down, which makes it a lot easier for us for the next time. Now that I've rinsed the shower, I'm going to apply my product to the walls and to the bathtub. I'm going to allow that a few minutes to be able to sit to take effect to make my job a lot easier. It would help if I had a little bit more left in this bottle. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I have my window open a little bit. Now I'm going to let that sit for about 2 or 3 minutes. This would be an excellent opportunity for us to take a break. Maybe sit down, put our feet up for a little bit, or switch to another task that will be a little bit lighter for our bodies. So that's one thing that we want to always think about, is separating the heavy tasks by putting a light task in between them. Well, it looks like my time is just about up, so I'm just going to wet my cloth and I'm going to start to scrub along those walls. Now how can I do that with, again, keeping good posture and positioning? Let's think about this for a little bit. So what we don't want to do is this, having to reach right over to be able to scrub the walls. Because again, that's putting our body out of position. We want to keep our task close to us. So then what can we do to bring that task closer? Well, same ideas with that telescopic pole when it came to doing the dusting. That allows us to work at an area that we wouldn't normally be able to reach. So using something that would be telescopic or a bit longer of a pole, that can allow us to be able to reach the other side of the bathtub. So maybe we don't have a telescopic brush of some sort. How about a Swiffer? Maybe that could work. Let's try that. Well, this is the closest thing that I have to a Swiffer around my house. So normally this is used for doing the floors, but I'm going to use the same idea to be able to clean the walls here of my shower. So because there's a bottle or canister on this, I'm going to remove that because I don't want to add any extra weight to what I have to do. Okay, so I'll wrap that cloth around, so I'm going to use that as my scrubber. So now, if I place that against the wall, that's going to allow me to keep my posture at a line. Helps me keep my posture better. And actually this is a lot easier than what I was doing before by reaching across the other side of the tub. So you can see that maybe keep good positioning. In fact, I can even put more force against the wall than I would normally with just my arms. So this is being very helpful. I can get right into the corners. And just like our favorite saying, don't work harder, work smarter. So hold on, I'm going to work really fast to finish this up for you. Now that really made cleaning the walls a lot easier. Actually left me a little bit out of breath. So maybe now I should take a break. So now for cleaning the inside of the tub, I don't want to have to again to reach down and put myself out of position. So I'm actually going to sit right on the edge of the bathtub. This is one way to be able to wash the closest side to me. That makes it a lot easier that way. Again, we could bring our stool in to sit at the side. But what about for reaching across? Maybe perhaps again getting down on our knees is not very easy and it is very uncomfortable. So what we could do by sitting on that stool or changing our position, and then perhaps we can again get our little trusty pole, and then we can work that across the other side to be able to reach all those hard to access corners. That can make it a lot easier for us. And sure, maybe it looks a little bit awkward, but you're going to appreciate it in the long run. So again, give me a moment and let me finish this up. all finished. So I'm just going to give it a nice little rinse and then we'll be good to go. Spick and span. Another chore that we often find difficult is cleaning the windows and the mirrors. Oftentimes when we have to reach across to be able to clean, we find it difficult on our shoulders, and that can be hard on our neck, perhaps even hard on our back. So here's a couple suggestions that we could use as well to be able to make it a little bit easier for us. First, of course, we spray on whatever we're going to use. Windex, vinegar works great as well. Now here's the tricky part. Oftentimes when we go to clean the mirrors, we're doing a lot of repetitive motions. We're twisting and turning, we're reaching over to be able to give that a nice clean. And that's difficult for us to do. So try this instead. So we can still use our desired product, but instead if you purchase just a cheap squeegee, you can get them at the local stores. That could be able to save you a lot of time and effort. So instead of having to do all that scrubbing, once everything is sprayed on, we can simply bring it across, and one more time. Okay, so now our mirror is nice and clean. I haven't used a lot of effort. I'm just going to wipe around the corners to get off all the excess that may have come down. And just like that, my job is done. Let's say if we had to clean windows a little bit higher up, we can do the same thing with our squeegee, but again this time instead we would put it on a telescopic pole. That would allow us to be able to reach to the top. It's true you may not be a professional window cleaner, but you'll figure it out, and in time you're going to enjoy the results that come with it. Well, our break is done. It's time for us to get back to work. One thing that we have to do now, we've dusted everything, we've cleaned the bathrooms. We need to be able to clean floors. So let's try some different techniques when it comes to using the vacuum. So when it comes to vacuuming, I must admit it, it's always been one of my favorite chores. I just love the sound that the vacuum makes when it sucks up all that dirt. It just is rewarding right away. And no, I do not vacuum at people's houses, just my own. But thanks for asking. So when it comes to using the vacuum, there's lots of different sorts that we can get. But the key is to think about getting something that's lightweight, something that's going to be easy for us to transport. As well, if our house has multiple levels, the one thing that we could consider that can make it easier for us is having a vacuum both on the upstairs floor and on the downstairs floor, to avoid having to carry that vacuum up the stairway. So now when we're doing our vacuuming, oftentimes you notice that we'll twist and we'll turn as we try to reach every crevice. But again, we think about that principle of keeping a task close to our bodies, because this allows us to keep our positioning upright. So when it comes to vacuuming, it's no different. So in my case, I have the wanded the tube, then I have the canister at the end. And this I find is a nice, easy type of vacuum to use because you're not always pushing and pulling with your arm all the weight of the canister, but rather it gets towed behind. So when it comes to using the vacuum, this one is nice because, again, it has a telescopic arm, which allows me to keep it nice and long and allows me to keep my positioning proper. So I'm going to try to step along with my vacuum as I'm moving it along the carpet. So I keep my body moving along with it, almost like I'm doing a little dance. So I step along with the vacuum, always going in the direction. I'm trying to avoid doing that extra long reach, because again, as you can see from my back and my positioning, it starts to add that extra curvature, which could essentially put my back at risk of getting hurt. So those are some things to keep in mind when it comes to vacuuming. And we can even just walk forward, we could bring it backwards, especially if we like to make sure that all of the threads in the carpet are all going the same way. It just makes it look so nice and clean, doesn't it? Alright then, let's get to it. But what do we do though if we find that a piece of furniture is in our way and we need to vacuum underneath it? Now it's true we could get on our hands and knees and be able to put the wand underneath. We could also again use that stool to be able to reach down low, Or we could simply move that piece of furniture out of the way. Well, usually it's not all that simple though, is it? We could either push or we can pull that piece of furniture. But what is easier for our body? What do you think? Now, as you can see, if I was to pull this piece of furniture, you can see the position that it puts my back into. But rather, if I push, naturally our back ends up being more straight. So it keeps better posture and positioning. So some things to facilitate that. If we have hardwood floors, we can put some of those felt pads underneath the legs of all of the chairs that we may have to move, or pieces of furniture. Or if it's on a carpet, we can get some of those little cups that go underneath the feet of the table or the chair or couch that we might have to move. So these sort of things can make our job easier. So when it comes time to move them, we're not going to be at great risk of hurting ourselves. So again, don't work harder, work smarter. Certainly another task that could be very draining and difficult for us is cleaning the baseboards. We don't like to get down to our hands and knees to be able to have to wipe them all. So instead, what you could do is use your vacuum. You can take the head off of the wand, and then we can use the vacuum handle wand to be able to go along the baseboards to get a hold of the dust and all the dirtiest spots. Now it's true, oftentimes people say you can't beat elbow grease, but we may not have a lot of elbow grease to go around. So then perhaps we can use this as a start and see what really is our priority and what's most important to us. So now that I finished all my vacuuming, I have to move on to cleaning the floors now with a mop. So I don't have a traditional mop like many households do. Instead I'm using this sort of like a Swiffer idea, which also has the bottle on the front where I can put my solution that I wish to put on the floor to be able to use that to clean. Now if I was using a traditional mop, oftentimes we will dip it into the bucket and we swing it out from side to side. But as you can see, that's moving myself away from the center of gravity, and it's twisting and turning, putting a lot of torque onto my spine. So the key is always to keep it close to you. So if we are using the traditional mop, we would simply make small little side-to-side motions as we're going back and forth. Not the big long motions, but just small ones, so that way we're not moving far away from our center of gravity. Now with this type of a method, I can give it a spray on the ground, and then I can simply clean back and forth, just like I would with a vacuum cleaner. So it again allows me to keep myself with proper posture and positioning. And we also want to think about pacing when it comes to cleaning floors or vacuuming, so we don't have to do the whole house at the same time. Break it up into sections. So perhaps in the morning I'll do a couple of rooms, in the afternoon I could finish off, or split it up from one day to the next. Or we can think about that 80-20 rule, where 80% of the dirt is probably found in 20% of the area. So we want to focus on those areas the most, to be able to get the most bang for our buck, to be as most efficient as possible. And one thing that also makes the job a lot better is putting on a little bit of music. Hey Google, put on some dance music.
Sure, here's a Google Play music station called 80s Dance Hits.